Hey everybody, it's Dana Shay and welcome to my channel. I am here today with my husband Shaun and we are going to be talking about what an unfaithful spouse should do when you find yourself caught in an affair. So we're going to jump right into the meat of this episode today. Shaun, why don't you kind of tell people a little bit about yourself and why you're here?
So yeah, we've been married 25 years. So been fortunate that to be in your life for this long still. And a little bit longer than 25 years. I mean, when you count the dating stages, I mean, it's probably close to 30 almost,
I
huh?
think it's been, let me see, we started dating in 1996. So yeah, 29 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Crazy.
A long time. And man, how old are you now?
We're
25?
not going to talk about all that. Okay, let's just keep going.
So no, yeah, we've been together for a while. Have had a lot of life experiences and good and bad, and so in particular to this episode, I have been an unfaithful spouse. So I'm just going to shed some light to a few things that can hopefully help those who are currently in my position, so they can get out of it, hopefully recover and have a successful marriage like we're doing now.
Yeah.
So yeah, first things first, Dana mentioned, basically is things the unfaithful spouse should do to rebuild trust.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, you have to acknowledge where you're at, be willing to acknowledge the affair and what you're doing and that it's wrong. If you can't get past that, or if you're not at that stage, then honestly, nothing else is going to work. I mean, everything else is just going through the motion. So until you're able to be honest and acknowledge the affair and acknowledge that it was wrong, then once that happens, then you can start moving on to other steps.
So let me just cut in real quick, Shaun, because I think like when someone acknowledges, like, I've been in this relationship, it's wrong, but right, like that, like a lot of people like, but this person really understood me, or but my spouse wasn't sleeping with me enough, or but we were disconnected. So how do like people's excuses play into acknowledging what is wrong?
So you're a little bit smarter in English than I was, but when you have a sentence and then you put but, what is that but? Remember the English term for that?
Oh, conjunction. Mm-hmm.
Conjunction. And usually after the but, something else comes, correct?
Right.
So how you're acknowledging something is wrong if you're going to put a but to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you truly acknowledge it's wrong, there's no but behind it,
Yeah.
because yeah, things can lead up to stuff, whatever. But if once you're wrong, you admit something, there's no but behind it.
So what do you think is behind but and behind, this is so funny. What do you think is behind people's tendency to excuse themselves? So like say for example, when we were going through our infidelity season,
Mm-hmm.
there like you didn't just acknowledge from day one, right? It took you a while to get to that point where you acknowledge like this is wrong, it doesn't matter, there's no excuses, this just is what it is. Why do you think people hold on to those excuses?
One, because they're not truly, they don't, not truly over it and don't want to get out of it.
Mm.
So it brings fulfillment in a different way. And so they're looking at that, like if I let this go, then I'm losing this part of this thing here that's bringing me excitement or whatever. And when you do that, you're not truly able to focus on anything else per se. So like if you're holding on to that, but you can never truly experience and see if your spouse could fulfill that need because you're looking elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you're being blindsided by that other need. So what I would say leading up to, once you acknowledge it, it's very crucial and critical that you get some I'm a therapy. I went to therapy, and it was on my own. It wasn't couples therapy. And so being an individual therapy helped me identify some deficiencies I had, and helped me identify why I was doing the things I was doing. So it's more, yes, you acknowledge it and you acknowledge it's wrong, but then what are you going to do afterwards? So
Mhm.
therefore, and it may cost you some money to go get this therapy, but you are finding out, because it goes, it's deeper than just the surface things. And so when you get down and you get a good therapist and they can unpack a lot of this stuff, you can like, wow, I didn't realize all this stuff was inside of me. And it may be from childhood trauma. It may be for, the different things you saw, but you just never knew how to process it. So when you get, and it's not, it's not fun.
Right.
Sometimes it's very uncomfortable, but going through that process helps you become a better person at the end.
Mhm.
And so, I'm not saying just right there, those two would, save your marriage, but it'll help you become a better person. So the ultimate goal, I feel, is really you have to become a whole person in order to fulfill, become a good person in marriage. And so,
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's why I really appreciated Marcus's podcast review, because he said like this podcast is helping him to become a godly husband, just a godly person. And so I think one of the things that I'm always telling people is like this is not a fair recovery is not a DIY process. You cannot do it on your
mhm,
own. We've tried to do it on our own.
mhm,
There's great books out there. Like I have an online course coming up called Infidelity Intensive that's going to be super beneficial for people to start the process. But a fair recovery, if you're going to do it the right way, you need a professional that's going to be able to
mhm,
help you to see those things, like you mentioned, Shaun, those root causes. Like nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to blow up my marriage today.
mhm.
Maybe if you're a psychopath, but most people don't do that. So there are root causes that causes someone, because it's not just even disconnection, because lots of people are disconnected in their
Right.
marriage, but not everyone chooses to have an affair.
Mhm.
So there is something going on deep within that person that causes them to choose that route.
Right.
I'm going to cheat on my spouse and become unfaithful. And that is where you're going to need some professional help, a professional coach, a professional therapist who specializes in affair recovery to help you to be able to get to the root issues of what's going on inside of you. So,
Mhm.
no, I totally agree. Now, real talk, it took some time for
Mhm.
you to get to that point.
Yeah, I did.
Why, like, what was behind not only you, but like, why do you think this stigma is, and men especially, with going to counseling or seeking a marriage coach? Like, what is the holdup? What's the obstacle?
Well, fortunately, I think in today's time, it's changing. It's not that negative stigma that it used to be. Back when we were coming up, when I was coming up, I mean, that was almost like a curse. You could never show your weakness by going and talk to somebody, because you just had to deal with it and process through it. You could talk to your boy or something like that, but I mean, really, how much advice do they know?
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, the tide is changing and people are realizing that therapy is good. It is good to talk to somebody to process through your thoughts and feelings, and it's really, I mean, I promote it all the time, because it really helps. It's an outlet, a positive outlet for you, and you can get some positive advice and good, stuff, and you're not out here trying to figure it out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, let's be real. I mean, like we think we know everything, but we don't. And how long if it's almost like the old direction at it. Like long for the longest time. God, oh, I got it, right. And would never want to look at a map or anything. But now we got these phones and all these great ideas. Like it would be dumb for me to go somewhere and not pull it up on my Google Maps or whatever and just try and figure it out on my own. Or
Yeah.
it'd be done for me to even use, you know what? I don't trust this phone. Let me go get a gas station map, which don't even sell anymore, and trying to figure it out, like how to get somewhere. We have the tools here.
Yeah.
Why not use the tools?
Yeah, and I think just the term therapy sometimes can be triggering, if I can use that word, triggering for people, because most people associate therapy with mental illness, with some sort of mental health issue. And this is why I love coaching, because you don't have, and this is, I don't believe that you need a therapist to help you with infidelity. I think you need a professional. That could be a professional marriage coach. It could be even a marriage mentor. Again, the key is someone who has helped other couples walk through this.
Yeah.
There's some amazing therapists. I said this on a previous episode. There's some amazing therapists, but they don't specialize in infidelity recovery. They might help people with bipolar disorder. They might help people with childhood trauma. When you go to them about infidelity, they know the tool, like they know if they've gone to school, like they know how to counsel people. But it's important that whoever you choose, that person is going to give you a pathway, a plan, a roadmap, because infidelity recovery is not something that you just kind of, I said this when we were downstairs in the kitchen earlier. I said, it's not something that you just kind of figure out on your own. It's not just like, I think we should start here and then we're going to end up here. There's a process to these things. And I love that, you're saying like it's on the responsibility of the unfaithful spouse to get their own help. Couples coaching, couples counseling, couples therapy, that's great. But at the end of the day, the person who broke the marriage bond, you need to figure out like what is going on within you. And if you're the spouse of someone right now, you're listening and you're thinking, well, my husband won't go to therapy. My husband won't come to coaching with me. It's going to be hard. Like, it's not impossible to overcome, but it's going to be hard because that person, first of all, just the accountability that another professional provides. Like, I know I can give myself grace all day long, right? Like why I do the things that I do, I can give myself a get out of jail free card all day. But when I'm speaking to somebody else and they say, no, Dana, the reason that you're stuck in this area is because then I'm accountable to that person. And so there's so many benefits, and we could do an entire episode on the value of getting help. But what else would you say? So first, they've acknowledged, yes, this is wrong. I'm not going to make any excuses. They've gone and sought help. Then what else?
So honestly, I want to kind of go back to the start because you've mentioned couples coachings and different things. So I really honestly feel that once you acknowledge what you've done is wrong, that at that point that you guys, the spouse that offended, there's the guilty one, needs to, when I say therapist or coaching, they need to, it's individual coaching on themselves, and not focus on the couples.
Yeah.
And so I would suggest that have a conversation with the spouse if she or he is willing to work or, give it a shot or, forgive or so to say, I'm wrong. I would like to work on myself. I would like a time period and not focus on the marriage right now, because I personally believe, and just from experience, when you're trying to work on the marriage, you're not focused on yourself. So you're trying to fix some issues of whatever, just to make the marriage work, but you're not fixing the root cause. So if you take a moment, and you have to be clear, it's clear communication. We've learned this over the years, and it can't be forever, like, can I take a time period to go and work on me? And this is what it looks like. I'm with a coach, I'm with a therapist, I'm with so-and-so, and we're going to a time period and then check in like, hey, I'm still working with this person. You don't have to tell them, hey, I'm doing A, B, C, and D, because truly, if it's working, the other spouse is going to see the fruits of it and the changes that are happening, and honestly, if you're telling them, hey, you see me this and that, then it's not really legit.
Yeah.
I feel, I think it's when genuine change is seen, and it, no matter how long it takes, I mean, I don't expect the spouse to, to be 6 months and, oh man, everything is great. I mean, they're going to look and see if it's real, it may take some time. So if it takes time, you have to be willing to go through that. I mean, because you harmed the person, so I always look at it, like you telling me, man, you can cut somebody off in a second, but it takes a while for me to cut you off. And so when you get to that point, when I cut you off, it's like for you to come back in, it's going to take a long time. When I get to that point, when I write you off, for me to let you back in, I mean, it may take
years.
Yeah.
Couple of eternities. Yeah. All right, Shaun, you just said something that is very, very important. And I really want to dive deeper into that when you're talking about, you going and getting the help for yourself, because I know that there are like offended or wounded spouses who are like, well, what is going to happen to the marriage while he or she is out there working on them or, themselves? So what do you think is the best response for the wounded spouse during that time? Because of course they're still hurting. They want their marriage to be restored or not. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're like, no, I'm done. I'm going to move on. And so you have this spouse who has wounded me. Now they're telling me I need to take time for me. Like I need to take time to work on myself. That can seem very insensitive.
Right, right, right. Honestly, in my opinion, that's a time for both of you to work on yourselves. To not saying anything is wrong with you, but it'd be a good time for you just to get healing on your own to see what that looks like away from me. Because there may be something that you discover and like, wow, I didn't know this was in here, didn't, so it did, so it looks weird, but both of you are working on yourselves, being a better version of yourselves so you can come together, if that's the will of God, come together and be a united front, a better united front than what you were. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would suggest now. Now, I already know, like, if I done unfaithful, who do I look like telling you to go work on yourself?
Right, right.
So that's a maturity thing, like where hopefully this conversation can help people understand that, and see like, okay, I'm gonna go do this because truth be told, I'm working with some, talking to some guys, and they want to. Like, I'm trying to focus on, yeah, you need to focus on yourself, this and that, and your wife. And well, how do I tell her that? That's not your job to tell her that.
Mm-hmm.
She has to come to that on her own, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody else can come and tell her, but you can't tell her that because you're unfaithful. You have offended her.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot come in and say, you need to be doing this, that, and the third, because that's just going to push her away.
Yeah, and let me just say that if you have committed adultery against your spouse, this is definitely not the time for tit for tat. This is
Mm-hmm.
not the time to say, well, yeah, I stepped out on you, but you were doing X, Y, and Z. Like, these two are not the same. One of these is not like the other.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe your spouse was a horrible spouse. Maybe they did not show you any attention, any affection. Maybe they never listened to you. They disrespected you. I mean, they did it all. That still does not constitute the right for you to go outside of your marriage, break your marriage covenant, involve another person or people into your marriage. That is not the same. And I really want to be very clear on that because I have heard from wounded spouses who have tried to justify the actions of their unfaithful spouse, saying things like, well, I wasn't doing my part. I got it. Listen, I can say that too. When we went through our infidelity season, I definitely see that there were holes. There was neglect on my part. There was just immaturity, I think, in a lot of areas. Like, I own mine, right? I can own my part. But it is important, like you're saying, that the unfaithful spouse does not try to level the playing field here by
Mm-hmm.
saying, well, I've got some stuff to work on and you've got some stuff to work on. Like that, if you're the unfaithful spouse, let your spouse's friend, mentor,
Mm-hmm.
pastor, coach, let that be the person to tell them that, not you,
Right.
because that's not going to go over well. Okay, so Shaun, we've got acknowledge the issue. We've got seek some professional help, get some personalized help is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
What else should the unfaithful spouse be doing?
I mentioned earlier, there's no time limit on stuff, so you can't place a time limit on the reconciliation period. So, honestly, you after you've gotten the steps to get help, and you're working on yourself, and there there's a transition. So when whoever you're working with, your professional is, so, okay, now they guide you through the steps of when is a good time to try to transition, and have conversations with your spouse, because again, like you said before, they may not want to at the time. So you have to be willing to accept that, if they
Hmm.
say, I don't want to be with you. Okay. I respect that. I respect your wishes. Would you allow me the opportunity to win you back? And if they say yes, they say no, but when you first started dating them, It wasn't just, okay, here you go. You had to work at it. So you're going to have to work again. You're going to have to work to rebuild trust. You're going to have to work to rebuild a friendship, all these different things. I mean, you're basically starting from scratch
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah, work. I mean, that word work is so important. People think that this is just good intentions or this is just gonna happen because I said I'm sorry, but the work part is so necessary. So tell us, Shaun, like in your view and in your own experience, what does the work entail? Because it's one thing, like we all say, like you need to work on your marriage, work on yourself. What does the work look like though?
It's, Work is different for everybody, every person. So work, number one, starts with when, again, you acknowledge it and you've ended the affair. You cut that other relationship off. So you have to work there. Then you have to work on getting the help. So once you get the help, then once you're willing, and both, once you work on the relationship, the other spouse is accepting or conversating with, you have to work to rebuild trust. All right. So work to get to know that person. Like, it sounds silly as, I started all the way from scratch over, like, basic, what is your favorite number? What is your favorite color? All the stuff, because I realized I didn't know you. So, I mean, it seems silly. Like, I remember, like, why are you asking me these things? But I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is what I'm doing too, because I want to get to know you and who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I started all the way from there and just worked the way up, like, what do you like to do? What can I do? What are your interests? It's not about me. What are things that make you smile? What is just, and so it's really a lot of really starting over. I mean, it's not easy work,
Right.
and it's not quick work.
hmm hmm Yeah, starting over. I think that's so important because your marriage, I often talk about like marriage version 1 or 1.0. You're now in version 2 or 2.0. So
Hmm.
anything that you thought you had from 1.0, you are literally, this is why the podcast is called Rebuilding Us. And there's a picture, if you all have seen the podcast art, it is a distressed brick wall because I want you to imagine like those brick walls coming all the way down. Marcus said in his podcast review that he's basically looking at a marriage that's in the rumbles,
Hmm.
right? That's what happens when infidelity enters your marriage. It is totally destroyed. It is torn down. Now, we believe that it can be rebuilt. They're not always rebuilt because
Hmm.
your spouse might not want to rebuild. And that's their prerogative. Like that, no spouse has to rebuild trust or rebuild a marriage after infidelity. But for those who are willing, there's a process to do this. So what you're talking
Yeah.
about, yeah, go ahead.
So you said something key, like 2.0.
Yeah,
So if your spouse is willing to rebuild, it's not going to look like it did before.
right.
So it's almost like a fire. When you burn down a house to the ground, I mean, you're all right, you're building up from the foundation, and it's not going to look like it did before. It's
Mm-hmm.
one because, I mean, it's time. So your house might have been 10 years, 5 years old, 10 years. And so it's new materials, new designs, new all that. So it's going to look different. So the same thing with a marriage. It's going to look different than what it did before, because why would you want it to look the same? Because
Right.
when it looked the same, that's what got you in the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so important. And this is again where you were talking about the wounded spouse needing to do their work.
Hmm.
That's important because, like, I look at our situation. If I contributed to the demise of my marriage, please hear what I'm not saying. Okay, I'm not saying I caused the affair, but I contributed to the demise of my marriage, let's say by being neglectful. I was focused on too much on my children. I was focused too much on my career. I was focused too much on my own needs being met or what have you. So if that was how I was operating in 1.0, I need to do some work on myself so that I don't show up that same way. Because if I show up that same way, even if my unfaithful spouse has done all their work and they've worked on themselves and they're a totally different person, they're coming back to someone who was the same person that helped to contribute to the demise of the marriage. So when you take responsibility, both spouses take responsibility not for what you don't own, but for what you do, and say, these are the things that I need to work on within me so that together we are showing up as a new creation. I love
Mhm.
the scripture that says, therefore, if any man or woman be in Christ, he or she is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things are become new. If you've been a Christian for a long time, you've probably quoted that verse a lot, but we don't realize the power that is behind that verse. You are now a new creation. Your marriage is new. And so there is a level of excitement to that. There's a level of, I often tell my couples, you can write whatever you want on your canvas. You've got a blank canvas now. Both of you have committed to doing the work of rebuilding. We're not still trying to like convince one spouse that this is a good
Mhm.
idea. You've both committed to doing the work. So let's do the work.
Mhm.
So you're talking about like rebuilding, or you're talking about, getting the help, taking your time, not putting pressure on the spouse. You said something that was, I think you said it and we kind of like went away, but I want to come back to it. Cutting the other affair partner off. That seems like common sense. Like that seems like everybody should know that. But you would be surprised, listeners, how many people feel like they can rebuild trust with their spouse while keeping the side chick on the side, or by keeping the other affair partner in the wings just in case this doesn't work out. If I ever hear that, I'm not going to continue. Like we can't continue, because what are you laughing at? Like
You.
it's true. Like you can't continue. You got a whole other person that's still a viable player in this marriage that you're claiming that you want to rebuild. So that has to be broken. And I know it's easier said than done, because like you struggled with that. It
Mhm.
wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to cut this person off. Like it was hard for you to do that. But I want to know, and you can totally just like take this question and make it your own. But what do you, because feelings don't matter. Like I think a lot of times we feel like, oh, I've got feelings for this person. My heart is connected to this person. I'm in love with this person. I can't just cut them off. So how do you just cut somebody off cold turkey because you want your marriage to work when your feelings and stuff are still involved?
I mean, I can cut people off cold turkey, so it's for me, it's not that hard. But honestly, what it is for me, what worked was when I did the work of understanding who I was. And so when you understand who you are and why you do certain things, it's not hard to cut certain things off. So until you do the work, and then with God's help, you if you don't do the work, you can't do it. You can't cut it off by yourself. So it's not going to happen. So you can say all day long, "Oh, I'm gonna stop doing this. I'm gonna stop doing this." But if that was the case, you would have never got into it. So when I go back to the professional help, and you understand, it gets the deep dive in there. Like, why do you do certain things, and what attracted you to this person? And and so, oh, this is what attracted me to that person. Well, I don't need that person for that. I can find the satisfaction by doing this. So I don't. Okay, so I can remove this person and still have and find this joy. So I don't need this person here.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes back to really doing the work with somebody. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, you can't do. I mean, oh, because I don't know. I mean, for me, I needed that professional help to
Mm-hmm.
get there and understand that. So
So are you saying, Shaun, that if an unfaithful spouse tells the wounded spouse, I've cut this person off and I'm not going to talk to them anymore, but they haven't done any work on themselves, are you saying that the wounded spouse shouldn't trust that? Because that's what it sounds like you saying to me.
I, without any proof or evidence, it's hard to believe that. So I mean, that person may can do that, but proof will be there down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So if you truly cut it out and stop, then whatever things you were doing before won't be there and won't be evident and stuff like that. So I'm not going to say nobody can do that. Some people can. I mean, you did it, right? I mean, like,
I did it. I did it cold turkey because I think, but because I'm just a very stubborn person.
mhm.
Like your stubbornness can work for you. It's actually a gift. People look at stubbornness as like such a negative thing, but I'm also an extremely disciplined person. So once my mind is set, it's set. You're never going to change it. You know this.
Mhm.
So if I said I'm going to cut that person off, that person got cut off and we're done. And I'm not thinking about it anymore. I understand not everybody operates that way, but one of the things that I think that I want to shout from the rooftops is that, again, if you're serious about rebuilding trust, that other person has to go. You cannot work with them anymore. Listen, you had a whole career shift
Hmm.
and changed locations because of that other person or people. So people, you got to be willing to make sacrifices here. Like,
Hmm.
you just destroyed your marriage. No, it's not going to be comfortable. Yes, you're going to have to do things that are very uncomfortable and that might cost you money. You might have to take a pay cut. You might have to sell your house if the person lives next door. I don't know. But like, whatever it is that you need to do, there can't be any like, well, I would cut them off, but we work together, or they're my boss, or I supervise them. Get another job. Like, get another job. Because if you're serious about doing this, it's going to cost you everything you've got. So, yeah, I think that people have to be really willing to say it's do or die. Like, there's no options of like, well, I might do this if it's not too uncomfortable here. All right, Shaun. Well, this has been good. So we've talked about doing the work. We've talked about acknowledging and what that work looks like, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Acknowledging what was wrong without making excuses, seeking professional, individual help, cutting the affair partner off. Is there anything else that you would say, especially kind of during these early stages, that an unfaithful spouse should be doing?
Honestly, Dana, I think this is good because too much can can really derail some things. Like you need some good foundational blocks to start with to build off of. Because for me, small wins really helped.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at the ending, all right, we're back together, and it's not getting there. It's like it can be discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have some small wins to start with, it gives you the confidence and the fuel and the energy. Like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I'm not a failure. I don't have to be a quitter. I can rebuild this person. I can rebuild myself. I can become a better person. I can restore my marriage. So, I mean, I honestly feel these are good starting blocks
That's
to
good.
get started with.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we can't throw the whole kitchen sink, but understand that this is a
But,
long.
hmm
It's
but,
true. It's true. Like, we can't throw the whole kitchen sink, but there's more. We don't want you to think that, oh, I've done these three things, I'm good to go, because your
yeah.
spouse is like, no, you still have work to do. But I think that we do need to acknowledge that this is the long game.
Hmm.
This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. I was coaching a couple one. I mean, this has happened many times, but I'm thinking about this one particular couple, and it had been like 6 months. And the husband, he was the one who had been unfaithful. And he was like, I don't understand why she's not over it yet. I don't understand like why we have to keep talking about this. I was like, sir, it's been 6 months. That is not, I mean, you can't grow a baby in 6 months. Like, what the world? Like what are we talking about here? So this is long game.
Hmm.
This is not, we're going to fix this marriage and be back to normal in 4 months. No, throw normal out of the window, okay? Because normal people are not breaking covenant and cheating on their spouses. So let's just throw that whole word normal out, and let's come up with a new normal for your marriage, a new version of your marriage. And I just really want to encourage the unfaithful spouse. Shame, I don't believe, is ever productive. I
Hmm.
think guilt is good. And I've said this so many times. Guilt leads us to repentance. You'll never know that what you're doing is wrong if you don't have a guilty feeling. If you're 2 years old, every little 2-year-old that steals cookies from the cookie jar, they feel guilty. That's why they hide, right? So guilt is a good thing as long as it leads you to repentance. Once you've repented, guilt has served its purpose, so we don't need it anymore. Shame is not productive. So if you have a spouse, an unfaithful spouse who's walking around wallowing in shame, talking about, I'm the worst person in the world, I can't believe I ever did this, I've let you down, I've let the family down, I've let God down, I've let the world down, I don't deserve to be alive. That is not productive, and you're going to
Hmm.
keep yourself stuck there. So while that may seem like humility, it's really shame. And I would encourage you not to do that. And we're going to talk much more on next week's episode about things that the unfaithful spouse should not do. Today, we talked a lot about what they should do,
Mhm.
but we're going to come back and talk about what the unfaithful spouse should not do and what the wounded spouse should not do. Because the wounded spouse has a responsibility in this whole dynamic. And so I really want to help you guys to know, like, really some very ancillary things, some things that you really should and should not be doing. But I think that this is a really great start, Shaun. And I appreciate you for your vulnerability and sharing. All right, everybody. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this one. Shaun, thank you so much for being here on the episode, on this video with us. And if you guys have any questions about anything that we've talked about today, you can always send me your questions at danashay.com/contact. I want to be sure that you get the Infidelity Intensive course. So whenever you're watching this video, you can always head over to danashay.com/infidelity intensive. We'll be sure to put that in the description in the YouTube video. So if you have not already subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe, turn those notifications on, and like this video. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.